3 days may not change the world, but they can change you. You don't need to flip your life upside down overnight. You just need a small decision, repeated with intention, for 3 days. 7 simple habits, not dramatic, not glamorous, but powerful enough to reconnect you with what the noise of life often buries: clarity, presence, and inner strength. Don't just listen once. Come back to this. Let it guide you whenever you feel off track. Repetition creates rhythm, and rhythm creates change. If something in this journey speaks to you, leave a simple mark below. Day 1, I'm in. That's it. No overthinking, just a quiet commitment to yourself. And if you want to walk this path with others who are rebuilding from within, hit subscribe. This isn't the end of something, it's the beginning. And you're not walking it alone. 1. Wake before the world to lead your day. The first win of the day is often the most overlooked. It doesn't come with applause, recognition, or even immediate results. It comes quietly, when no one's watching, when everything is still, and when the world hasn't yet made its demands. It's that sacred sliver of time just before the noise begins, before the pings, the traffic, the rush to catch up. Most people miss it, not because they don't care, but because they've forgotten that they can choose how the day begins. We live in a culture addicted to reaction, checking notifications before brushing our teeth, rushing to meet a schedule we never consciously set, letting the world pull us before we've even stood up straight. But there is another way. Waking up just 20 or 30 minutes before the usual chaos isn't about performance. It's about reclaiming the first breath of the day. It's a moment of stillness that trains mental clarity, a space where you sit with your thoughts, not your inbox, where you drink your coffee in silence, not while scrolling. This habit is not about waking early for the sake of it. It's about rising with intention. And in doing so, you send a message, not to the world, but to yourself, that you are leading the day, not following it. I remember my friend Jeff. His mornings used to be a blur. He'd wake 5 minutes before work, scrambling to find his keys, burning toast, starting the day behind. I challenged him once gently. Try waking up just a little earlier. Don't do anything fancy. Just be awake before the world is. By the 3rd morning, he looked at me and said, "I felt like the day belonged to me." That's it. Ownership. When you rise before the noise, you're not just avoiding stress, you're setting the tone. The Stoics understood this centuries ago. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I have to go to work," as a human being. That wasn't just about career or productivity. It was about showing up in the world with presence and discipline. The mind, if left unchecked, will seek comfort. It will say not yet, again and again. And that same voice will follow you throughout the day, postponing action, avoiding discomfort, chasing distraction. But if you train yourself to rise when it's hard, to begin the day before it begins pulling you in, you build a type of inner strength that doesn't just last for a morning. It starts bleeding into how you respond to stress, how you interact with others, and how you move through difficulty. The benefits aren't dramatic on day 1, but by day 3, you feel something shift. There's less rushing, less tension. You're no longer sprinting to catch the day, you're steering it. This is what the Stoics would call self-command. And it's not about controlling the outside world, it's about commanding your attention, your first thoughts, your presence. Waking early with intention is a daily invitation to step into the day consciously. It's not a performance, it's a practice, one rooted in calm, clarity, and quiet discipline. And when you make this moment yours consistently, you start to see that discipline isn't restrictive, it's freeing. You begin to act from purpose, not pressure, from presence, not panic. And in that stillness before the world wakes, something powerful is born. A man who's no longer running from the day, but walking into it, deliberate, centered, and awake. 2. 3 days without complaining. Reclaim your voice. Complaining has become so normalized that we barely recognize it anymore. It seeps into our conversations, rides on the back of our sighs, slips between jokes, and echoes in that single sarcastic word we throw into the air when things don't go our way. Typical. But beneath the surface, something else is happening. Each complaint, however harmless it seems, becomes a subtle training ground for your mind to focus on lack, on error, on what's wrong. You start your morning with a cold cup of coffee, and instead of letting it be a minor inconvenience, It becomes a sign that today will be a bad day. You sit in traffic, and instead of using the time to reflect or simply breathe, you fill the silence with frustration. It becomes a habit, and like any habit repeated enough, it begins to shape who you are. The Stoics warned us about this. Epictetus wrote, "It's not things that disturb us, but our interpretation of them." That means what upsets us is rarely the thing itself, it's our story about it. And complaints? They're often nothing more than reflexive stories we've stopped questioning. Try this instead. Go 3 days without complaining, not just the big things, all of it. The weather, the slow internet, your colleague's tone, the long line at the store. Just observe, don't react, don't label it, just let it be. It's a radical exercise, not because it's complicated, but because it forces awareness. It pulls your attention out of autopilot. You begin to notice how often you default to negativity. And that's where transformation begins, not by forcing positivity, but by refusing to feed the cycle of negativity. A woman who lived a few houses down from me tried this once. She was always sharp, quick with her opinions, and prided herself on telling it like it is. But after 3 days of intentional silence, no complaints, no digs, no passive-aggressive comments, she came to me and said, "I didn't realize how much of my day was spent reacting, not thinking, just reacting." Her voice had become a vent, a release valve for frustration that never actually addressed anything. And when that habit stopped, even briefly, a different voice had room to rise. The one rooted in calm, reason, and clarity. That's what reclaiming your voice really means. It's not shouting louder. It's choosing when and how you speak so that your words build rather than break. For many, this exercise will feel unnatural. There will be moments when the words sit right on the edge of your tongue, begging to be spoken. You might even feel like you're holding something in. But over time, you'll realize you're not holding back. You're holding steady. You're learning to act, not react. You're choosing clarity over chaos. You're shifting from being someone who vents to someone who leads, even if just in your own mind. The Stoics taught us that self-discipline begins in thought, but is revealed in speech. If you can learn to master your tongue, you're already ahead of most. The power of this 3-day practice isn't in perfection, it's in perception. You'll begin to hear yourself more clearly. You'll recognize your triggers. And in that recognition, you'll gain the rarest kind of freedom, the ability to choose your response. Not everything needs a reaction. Not every discomfort needs a complaint, and not every bad moment has to become a bad day. Sometimes your strength is most visible not in what you say, but in what you choose not to. For 3 days, give yourself that silence, not as suppression, but as self-command. And when you speak again, you'll notice your voice carries more weight, more calm, more direction. That's how you begin to transform your inner world, one unsaid complaint at a time. 3. Silence the noise. Disconnect to reconnect. If you're still listening, you're already ahead of most. The majority check out long before the silence begins. But you're here. That says something about the part of you that's searching for more than constant stimulation, something deeper than noise. Number 1. In today's world, our minds are rarely left alone. Our phones live in our pockets or hands, always buzzing with alerts, updates, pings, opinions, and distractions we never asked for. We scroll through highlight reels of people we don't know, comparing ourselves to their curated moments, convincing ourselves we're falling behind. This isn't just digital clutter, it's mental erosion. And yet most of us are afraid to disconnect, not because we love our screens, but because we fear the silence waiting behind them. But silence isn't the enemy. It's the invitation. One weekend, I deleted everything: Twitter, email, news apps, even Spotify. The first day felt like withdrawal. My hand reached for my phone without my permission, like a nervous twitch. But by the second day, something shifted. My thoughts started rising to the surface. Not just the surface level stuff, but the ones I hadn't made time for. The buried truths, the old questions, the small dreams I'd shelved. On the third day, I didn't miss the noise. I missed me. The Stoics understood this. Seneca wrote, "Withdraw into yourself as much as possible, not as an escape from life, but as a return to what's real." And yet, how can you withdraw if you're never alone? How can you reflect when your mind is constantly interrupted? Solitude is not a luxury, it's a discipline. It's what builds mental clarity, emotional self-control, and a grounded sense of identity. You don't need to move to the mountains or cancel your responsibilities. You just need 3 days, a simple, sacred pause. Put your phone on airplane mode. Walk without headphones. Eat without distractions. Let your mind feel empty so that it can begin to refill itself with what actually matters. The anxiety that may rise at first is not a signal to stop. It's a sign you're waking up. That itch to scroll is not boredom. It's your nervous system asking you to be present with what you've been avoiding. And when you sit with that discomfort instead of numbing it, you begin to remember how capable your mind truly is. The DDD1 philosophy reminds us that digital silence is not just about quieting the world. It's about reclaiming our focus and rebuilding our mental toughness. We chase clarity, discipline, and stillness, yet we feed our minds with constant noise. This disconnect is what keeps so many men tired, restless, and reactive. But when you unplug, you give your nervous system space to reset. Your thoughts slow down, your attention deepens. You remember how to breathe, not just automatically, but consciously. After 3 days, the world doesn't change, but your relationship with it does. You stop feeling like you're behind and start realizing that you've simply been distracted. You stop needing constant input and start trusting your own voice again. This is how you reconnect, not just with your goals or your values, but with yourself. And if you've come this far, stay. The next shift is deeper. What you're looking for is already inside. It's just been drowned out. Now you're giving it space to speak, and that space, that's where strength begins. 4. Speak less with weight. In a world obsessed with noise, the rarest signal is silence. We're surrounded by commentary, hot takes, and people who speak not because they've thought something through, but because they're afraid of not being heard. But there's a quiet kind of strength in holding your tongue. Not as a retreat, but as a choice. Your words should land like a stone in still water, not disappear like foam in the wind. There's a reason some people barely speak, yet when they do, everyone listens. It's not a mystery, it's discipline. Speaking less doesn't make you invisible, it makes your presence more intentional. When you speak only when something is worth saying, your words gain gravity. They're no longer just part of the blur, they become anchors. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Let your speech be brief and precise." That wasn't a style suggestion, it was a mental standard. He understood that talking too much often reveals we haven't really thought at all. Over-explanation, defensiveness, endless opinions, they're symptoms of an untrained mind. But clarity, confidence, and calm, those are earned in silence. I remember working with a man named Rob. He was sharp, competent, but he dominated every meeting. People stopped listening to him, not because he lacked value, but because he never stopped to listen. 1 month after exploring Stoic practices, he decided to try an experiment. Speak only when essential. At first he felt invisible. He worried he'd fade into the background. But something strange happened. People leaned in. They waited for him to speak. And when he did, they listened. Not because his ideas had changed, but because his words now had weight. In that pause between stimulus and response, he found presence. That's the heart of speaking less, not withholding for the sake of it, but using restraint to sharpen your thinking. When you don't feel the need to speak just to fill space, your mind begins to prioritize what matters. You no longer react to every comment. You begin to notice tone, body language, and unspoken tension. This level of awareness doesn't just make you a better communicator, it makes you wiser. Because speech in excess often becomes a form of escape. We talk to avoid silence. We talk to protect our ego. We talk so that no one sees the parts of us that are still unsure. But the strongest people I've met never needed to say much. Their stillness did the talking. That's the kind of presence you cultivate when you choose your words the way a craftsman selects his tools. Not every situation needs your input. Not every opinion needs to be shared, and not every discomfort needs to be filled with words. This isn't about being aloof or detached. It's about becoming deliberate. A man who speaks with intention builds a life with intention. Over the next 3 days, try this. Say less, observe more. Don't finish someone's sentence. Don't interrupt with a correction. Don't comment unless it adds value. Feel the silence. Let it stretch. Let it shape you. In that space, you'll begin to hear yourself more clearly. And what you'll find is that your real power doesn't lie in how much you say, but in how well you listen, how deeply you notice, and how intentionally you respond. Speaking less isn't passive. It's active control. It's training your mind to resist the impulse to prove, to react, to fill the void. And in doing so, you step into something rare, a kind of mental stillness that most never experience. You become grounded, you become focused, you become respected, not because you demanded it, but because your silence spoke louder than 1,000 empty words. 5. Choose discomfort. Build inner strength. Most people wait for comfort to align before they act. They wait for motivation, for clarity, for the timing to feel right. But those who grow, truly grow, don't wait, they move, even when it's inconvenient, uncomfortable, or uncertain. Growth doesn't come from ease. It comes from choosing the hard thing on purpose. That choice, repeated daily, becomes the bedrock of inner strength. Discomfort has a bad reputation in modern life. We avoid it like it's fire. But here's the truth few speak about. The fire doesn't always burn you. Sometimes it forges you. And the Stoics knew this better than anyone. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it is humanly possible, you can do it too." In other words, your limits are often not real. They're habits, dressed up in logic. They're patterns we've mistaken for personality. But when you begin to choose discomfort, voluntarily with presence, something inside you shifts. It starts small. You take the stairs instead of the elevator. You finally start the project you've avoided. You call someone you haven't spoken to in years. You speak your mind in a room that prefers silence. These aren't dramatic acts, but they are deliberate ones. And that's where the power lies. Not in size, but in intent. There's a man who lives down the street from me, retired Navy. Doesn't talk much, but every morning, no matter the weather, he walks. No umbrella. Rain, wind, cold, it doesn't matter. One day I asked him why he didn't just wait for better weather. He smiled and said, "If I wait for comfort, I wait forever." That stayed with me. Because that's what most of us do. We wait, we rationalize, we convince ourselves that resistance means stop. But often, resistance means going. The Stoic habit of choosing discomfort builds what modern minds call resilience, but it goes deeper. It's about showing your nervous system that you can do hard things and not die. That you can be afraid and still act. That your identity is not glued to your preference for ease. When you act in the face of resistance, you train something powerful, emotional self-control. And that control becomes the foundation for real confidence, not the loud kind, but the kind that moves quietly because it knows its own strength. The discomfort you choose today becomes the capacity you carry tomorrow. It's not about pain for pain's sake. It's about training your will. About walking towards small frictions so you're not overwhelmed by bigger ones. It's about saying to yourself, I do not shrink from effort. I step into it because it sharpens me. After 3 days of doing one uncomfortable thing daily, no matter how minor, you start to realize something. Your threshold isn't fixed, it expands. The task that felt heavy on day 1 feels lighter on day 3. Not because it changed, but because you did. You showed up, you crossed the inner line. And that proof lingers. It stays in your body, your breath, your voice. It builds character. When you stop needing ease to take action, you start becoming the kind of man who doesn't fold under pressure, who doesn't seek escape when things get hard. That kind of presence is rare. That kind of mindset, rooted in the DDD1 principle of mental toughness and self-discipline, becomes unshakable. It isn't loud. It doesn't need to be. It simply shows up again and again, regardless of comfort. And when that becomes your rhythm, life stops feeling like a storm. It becomes something you navigate with intention and quiet strength. That's the gift of chosen discomfort, not the hardship itself, but who you become by walking through it. 6. Be fully present in small actions. We live in fast forward. Our days blur together not because we do too little, but because we do too much at once. We eat while scrolling, answer texts mid-conversation, and zone out during routines we barely register anymore. We don't remember what breakfast tasted like, what our children said after dinner, or even how we got home from work. We're moving, yes, but living? That's a different question. The truth is, life doesn't ask you to do more. It asks that you show up for what's already right in front of you. And presence, that elusive clarity we all crave, doesn't require more time, just more attention. For 3 days, practice being fully present. When you wash the dishes, wash the dishes. Feel the water, notice the sound, let your mind stay right there. When you walk, leave the headphones behind and listen to your feet, to the wind, to the breath in your chest. When you eat, chew, taste. Don't rush through the moment to get to the next. Presence doesn't slow you down, it grounds you, it stretches the moment. You walk away from the same day not exhausted, but nourished. I had lunch last week with an old friend. No phones, just a table, 2 chairs, and the space between us. At first, the silence felt exposed. We were so used to breaking it with screens. But by the end, we laughed more than we had in months. And not because the food was better, but because we were actually there. That's the point. When you show up fully, even for the ordinary, it becomes extraordinary. A simple bite becomes rich. A conversation becomes alive. A chore becomes a ritual. Seneca said to be everywhere is to be nowhere. And most of us are everywhere all the time, but rarely here. The Stoics taught that presence is a form of power. It gives you back your focus, it sharpens your thinking, it strengthens your emotional self-control. Because when you're truly in the moment, you're not being pulled by regret or anxiety. You're not rushing toward the next thing. You're not trying to escape the moment. You're fully inside it. That's the paradox. Presence doesn't ask for silence or retreat. It asks that whatever you're doing, you do it with your whole attention. And over time, this habit, though small, changes everything. When you bring mindfulness into the ordinary, your stress decreases, your clarity increases. You make better decisions, not because you know more, but because you're finally here to notice what matters. This is the hidden strength inside stillness, not just being quiet, but being anchored. For those of us chasing productivity, presence might feel inefficient, but it's the opposite. When your mind is fully where your body is, you don't waste energy on rework, distraction, or self-doubt. You execute with calm precision. You respond instead of react. You get more done with less friction and more meaning. The DDD1 principle reminds us that personal growth doesn't only come from the big choices. It lives in the smallest ones, repeated, intentional, quiet, choosing to be here, right now, and again and again. For 3 days, practice this habit. It might be hard at first. Your mind will wander, your fingers will reach for distraction, but bring yourself back, gently, firmly, like you'd guide a child back home. No scolding, just direction. That's how you reclaim the moment. That's how you make each day something you actually remember. Not as a blur, but as a life you were fully present for. One breath, one step, one task at a time. 7. Reflect before you sleep. Master your inner life. Most people end their day the way they began it, on autopilot. They collapse into bed, phone in hand, letting screens numb the last fragments of awareness before sleep pulls them under. And then they wake up wondering why they still feel tired, heavy, or stuck, even after 8 hours of rest. It's not just the body that's exhausted, it's the mind that never had space to breathe. You can't change what you don't notice. And if you move from one day to the next without ever pausing to observe, your life becomes a loop, full of activity, empty of direction. The Stoics knew this. They made it a daily practice to review the day before sleep, not as a ritual of shame or guilt, but as a mirror to see clearly where they stood, what they did, and who they were becoming. Seneca wrote, "Each evening I review the day, and if I find faults, I correct them." That's not perfectionism, that's presence. 5 minutes is all it takes. Sit in silence. Ask yourself, what did I do well today? Where did I slip? Did I act with purpose or did I drift? You don't need a leather-bound journal or poetic words. You need honesty. One man I know, quick to temper and always anxious, started doing this simple review before bed. Not a long diary, just a few lines each night. After a week, he told me, I thought I needed therapy. Turns out I just needed to stop lying to myself. There's something powerful about writing down your truth. Not the polished version, but the quiet one, the one you normally avoid. This habit clears your mental clutter. It lets you empty your emotional inbox, leaving your mind lighter, quieter, and more ready for rest. Because when you carry unresolved emotions into the night, they don't disappear. They seep into your sleep and shape your next morning. But when you face them directly, with calm awareness, not judgment, you loosen their grip, and that shift echoes forward. You wake up clearer, you move with more intention, You begin to live with a sense of alignment that doesn't require drastic change, only daily attention. The DDD1 philosophy reminds us that mental clarity, emotional self-control, and personal growth come not from intensity, but from consistency. Reflecting before bed is one of the most practical forms of self-discipline. It demands nothing but you. You don't have to fix everything, you just have to see it. Because once you see it, you can choose. And once you choose, you reclaim your power. Over time, these nightly reflections become something more than a habit. They become a compass. They remind you that growth isn't measured by how perfectly you perform, but by how honestly you live. You start noticing your patterns, the excuses you repeat, the emotions you suppress, the strengths you forget you had. And this awareness isn't loud, it's not flashy, but it's transformative. It roots you, it gives you direction when the world feels chaotic. It teaches you to trust yourself again. For 3 nights, try this. Sit still, ask real questions. Answer them without flinching. If nothing else, you'll sleep better. Not just because your body is tired, but because your mind is clear. And when you wake up, you'll do so with something rare in today's world: self-knowledge. Not the kind you read about, but the kind you earn. In the quiet, when the world has gone to sleep, and all that remains is your honest reflection staring back. When you commit to just 3 days, with 7 grounded habits rooted in presence, clarity, and self-discipline, something shifts. Not everything around you, but everything within you. These aren't hacks. They're mindset resets. They help you reclaim your mornings, sharpen your attention, build emotional self-control, and detach from distractions that weaken your inner strength. Each habit, from waking early to reflecting before sleep, trains your focus and builds a powerful foundation for lasting change. You don't need to be perfect. You only need to be intentional. Now it's your turn. Which habit spoke to you most? What did you experience on day 1? Share your story in the comments. Your insight might help someone else start. If this helped you reconnect with your clarity or direction, like the video and subscribe for more. Remember, you attract what you become. And this, right here, is how becoming starts. 3 days, 1 shift, a new you begins.